What's up, everybody? How's it going? I am out here on the beach, as you can tell. Tomorrow's sort of a significant day for me. I will be dropping a song for Throwback Thursday called Dear Slim FAQ, which is obviously an acronym for frequently asked questions. And so I thought, since this song that I'm dropping tomorrow is sort of in reference to the track I wrote to Eminem years and years and years ago, I figured I would go ahead and share the story behind the song I wrote to Eminem and all the stuff that happened subsequently. So if you guys have any questions or any comments, feel free to drop it below. I'm also going to probably podcast this. So you can always listen to my podcast at kj52podcast.com. It's also on Spotify. It's also on YouTube at youtube.com/52television. But you can always go to kj52podcast.com. One more plug, shameless self-plug. If you'd like to support the podcast or support what I do, you can become a patron at patreon.com/kj52. So that is a dizzle. Feel free to drop some comments or questions below. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. And then if you ever really want to deep dive on my story, you can purchase my book. I actually wrote two books. One book is called What Happened Was, and the other book is called Victory Lap. You can actually listen to What Happened Was on Spotify as an audiobook under What Happened Was, the mixtape, and all that good stuff. So I'm just going to spin this around for a second. As you can tell, my kids are going crazy. It is beautiful sunset though. Check that out. All right. So before I even started, Joshua Toledo says, what inspired you to write this song to M? So I'm just going to dive right into it. This is pretty much the answer to that question. Way back, I feel like in 1997, maybe it was around 1997. Myself and my former rhyme partner, Golden Child, we were doing a lot of mainstream shows. We were, as believers, going into these places. One of the places that we played at was a place called South Beach, which is in Miami. Shout out to Levi, who's watching right now, and Krista Ann. Shout out to you guys. One of those songs, one of the groups that we were going to open up for in South Beach was a group called the Beatnuts. And we were scheduled to go on the radio and freestyle before the show. And this radio station, you're probably familiar with the guy who is a huge dude now, DJ Khaled, Mr. We Are the Best, Mr. Another One. This was his pirate radio station, even though we were on with a different DJ. Anyway, we're freestyling, and one of the guys goes, oh man, you gotta check out my man Slim Shady. And he was just telling me about him. I had already known about him just from being in that underground scene of battle rap and underground hip hop, but that was the first time anybody had like divulged from that and told me to check him out. And he quoted me like one of his lyrics. This is like 97, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I was like, a white dude from Detroit, that'll never work out. Flash forward a year or two, I get my record deal, I put out my solo album. Long story short, I'm getting compared to Eminem, not like on the regular, but just like every once in a while I would hear a bit. Now this is the point where I had already finished my album, but it didn't come out for another year. So the timing of me coming out was me coming out after Eminem, not before, even though my record was done before Eminem. So I never forget going into some record store that I was going to put my music in on consignment, and someone's like, oh, you should check out this Slim Shady sampler. And I got it, and it was like total shock rap, and I thought, oh, this is what a lot of white boy rappers have to do. They have to be like the rapper that's so shocking that you can't help but, you have to respect. I mean, it was just a different era for white rappers back then. Long story short, by the way, shout out to Mario Christopher. Long story short, Eminem comes out, just massive, blows up. And next thing I know, I never forget this, I played a show, this is before my album came out in Texas, and it was with a bunch of breakdancers, and the breakdancers said, oh, that guy sounds like M, he's talking about me. And I'm like, what? Like, you know, for me, originality was a huge thing, not biting was a huge thing, you know, being your own rapper was a huge thing. So when anybody would compare me to that, I just would get super frustrated, right? I get super frustrated because I'm like, I've been doing this before Eminem came out, my album was done before Eminem's album came out, but the timing makes it look like I'm coming out after him, right? So little by little, you know, this is the Christian music industry where there are, you know, so much of the Christian music industry is like, if you like A, here's B, you know, and here's a safe alternative, which, you know, I understand the relevance of something like that, but it always sort of irritated me. And I just started getting more and more comparisons. And to be honest with you, it started getting under my skin. You know what I mean? It started bothering me because, you know, I worked really hard on my craft. I took what I did very seriously. I paid a lot of dues. I had a lot of stuff thrown at me. I got booed quite a bit. You know, I mean, I struggled, and to get just dismissed as a clone is not, you know what I mean? It's just frustrating. Especially by people who I didn't necessarily respect their opinion. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't necessarily in the genre, but that's neither here nor there, right? You can't help how people, like, all you can do as an artist is put your music out. How people receive it, you really, you know, it's hard to control how that happens, right? Anyway, so this is around 2000, right? So it was right around that time when all this is happening when I started thinking of, like, how do I deal with this? Am I going to be like under the shadow of this guy for my whole career, right? You know, how am I going to deal with this, right? And so I thought, you know, you can either spend your whole career just like trying to shake it off and being irritated, or I've always taken the opinion that if something is a problem, you meet it head on, right? You just deal with it. You go right at it. And so shout out to a bunch of people jumping in. Joshua Toledo, Saving Grace Parton, Emily Walker, Nicholas Howland Butler, Rachel Ingram. Hi guys. Anyway, long story short, I thought one of the best ways I could deal with this would be for me to just simply address it head on, right? And so one way I thought I could do that would be by doing what rappers do, which is rappers write songs, right? I write songs. I write about the things that I see, and I speak to them. That's what I do. That's what music is, especially hip hop. I mean, hip hop is all about scanning your environment and reacting to it through music. You know what I mean? Anyway, long story short, so here I am, it's around 2000, this is 20 years ago, I start thinking of, you know what, I'm going to write him a song addressing this, but I'm going to write it to him, because in some ways, I felt like some of our stories were similar, right? You know, white guy, broken home, loves hip-hop, very black-dominated art form, very respectful of the culture, but had to pay my dues. Anyway, long story short, you know, I just felt like Jesus got a hold of me and my whole trajectory changed. Long story short, I keep saying this. I'm going to be saying this a lot. This is a very long story, and it's probably going to be a long story. It's not going to be made short. Anyway, here's where I'm at. Stan comes out. You know, Stan comes out on the Marshall Mathers LP, and I remember hearing it and being like, because at that point I was purposely staying away from listening to Eminem's music, because I was like, I don't want anybody to say, oh, you're influenced by him, when I've never heard his music. So I purposely, you know, I mean, some songs you couldn't help but hear, but I was purposely not listening to his albums with that in mind. And long story short, I end up hearing Stan, and I remember thinking, like, this is a really creatively written song, and I thought maybe I'm gonna do what's called the mixtape route. And if you don't understand anything about mixtapes, especially back then, hip-hop artists would take someone else's song and they would write their own verse to address that person. Now, this was usually done as a diss, right? You know, you're beefing with another rapper, you take their biggest hit, you get the instrumental, and like the ultimate insult is to like rap over their instrumental and address them. Now, I thought, I'm not going to insult this guy. I'm going to speak to him with the same idea that people spoke to me, right? And that's kind of where the inspiration of where the song came from. So it was the idea of taking, you know, what was his concept and flipping it, right? But with the mixtape idea, that was the idea. Anyway, Saving Grace says you say long story short a lot. Love you, man. Some stories you just can't cut short. You're absolutely right. This is the very, very long story. I'm going to say this from now on. Make a long story longer. Anyway, so I'm going to be honest with you. When I wrote the first version, I'll never forget. I wrote it probably at around 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when I used to write a lot of my lyrics, like super late at night. And I wrote it over an instrumental of a Roots song. If you don't know who the Roots are, that's the band that plays on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. I didn't have a chorus because I just wrote verses, and the verses were super long. And so I write this song, and I just sat on it. Like, that's all I had. I just had somebody else's beat. I had this concept of me writing to him. I didn't even write a chorus because it was just really all about the verses. I'm out on the road with my then hype man, and he's sort of messing around with a beat, and I hear the beat, and I'm like, oh, I like that beat. But the problem was his beat was just filled with samples. Like, there was no way I was going to beat, because basically, like, it would be like super expensive for me to clear the song. Anyway, long story long, I remember doing this song one time live at a place called Crossover, and it was really just an experiment. And I'll never forget, when I got to the chorus, I didn't have anything to say, so I just started sort of making up la-las, you know? And I wind up seeing this huge reaction to the song when I did it live. Like, people had their hands in the air, like worshiping, you know, and I'm like, this is not the reaction I thought was going to happen. And I thought, maybe there's something here that I need to look at. Well, I end up getting dropped by my label. I move on to my second label, and at this time I start working with a guy named Todd Collins again, and I say, hey Todd, I really got this idea for this song that I think could be a big game changer for me. And sure enough, he hooks up an original track, and I re-recorded it, and so now the song is done, right? And it's pretty much artistically the way I wanted it to be. And I can't remember if this point, strangely, and this is like, it's not pre-internet, the internet was around, but certainly pre-social media. And I remember people would start asking me, like, just stopping me, like, hey, I heard you wrote this song to Eminem, like, how can I hear it? And I'm thinking, how do you even know about it? Like, I've only performed it like once, right? And I started to see that there was momentum behind the song bigger than any song I had ever written. And I thought, okay, this is striking a nerve, you know? This is striking a nerve. So I'm in a bit of a rebuilding. I go back to the record label and I say, hey, listen, out of all the songs on this upcoming album, which was collaborations, I said we should probably shoot a video to this one, because I think this is going to be the one that's going to be the biggest song. So sure enough, we shoot a video to the song. You know, we shoot a video and I just hit the road, and I forgot all about it. I'm on the road, I'm touring like crazy, and you know, my label at the time, Tooth and Nail, says, oh, we're gonna send it to MTV2, like we have a hookup with MTV2, so we're gonna see if they'll play it. And I'm like, all right, cool, if it happens, it happens. Months go by, I think like 1 or 2 months, and they basically say to me, we didn't hear back from, we don't know what's going to happen. I'm in Canada, and I am stuck in, so anyway, I end up, I'm stuck in traffic in Canada, and I find out of nowhere, MTV's TRL is going to play the video that day. Now, this may seem totally insignificant to a younger generation, like, what's MTV's TRL? There's no question, out of all the music formats, MTV's TRL was the biggest not just music format, like the biggest in the country. Like, to get on there was unheard of. And out of nowhere, I'm going to be featured. And MTV says they were going to purpose holding it up to the you know, my wife is holding the phone up to MTV, or to the TV. I'm listening in real time. And I find and I listen to them, and basically what they say is that I was dissing Eminem, that the song was disrespectful. They don't mention anything about Jesus. They don't mention anything about being a Christian. They just basically set me up to make me look a certain way. And then they go, but you check it out. And then they play 1 minute of the song and they cut it off. So essentially what they did is they skewed me to look a certain way, right? And I was just like, I can't believe this. Like, I can't believe they would spin it like this, right? And, you know, so in my head I think, well, that's it, right? People will know. Well, sure enough, this begins this sort of spiral of him getting a copy of it backstage at the Video Music Awards. Then next thing I know, a couple years later, I'm talking to his ex-wife, Kim Mathers, in jail, while she's in jail. Next thing you know, he responds. You know, this is like 10 years later, he responds. At least I felt like he did. And this isn't counting the Christian rappers who wrote diss songs about me, you know, the secular rappers that wrote diss songs about me. So all that is sort of more of a part 2, and I'm going to come back to this tomorrow, because tomorrow, Dear Slim FAQ version drops on all platforms, drops tonight at midnight. So you guys can check that out. I would love to hear what you think about it, and I will come back tomorrow for part 2 for Throwback Thursday. Make sure you go check that out. Yeah, that's the deal. So I'm gonna grab a couple questions and then I'm gonna jump off before my kids beat the crap out of each other. All right, let's grab a few questions. You guys have a ton of you guys in here. I'm going way back. Eminem was on Epstein's Island. He is a pedo. What?
I think it's knocking me over on my surfboard.
All right, well then stay away from him then. There you go. Sam Riley says Eminem was on Epstein's Island. He is a pedo. Okay, that's okay. Doesn't feel like 20 years ago, says Melissa Murphy. What else we got here? Rob Hale, do you ever hear from Pigeon John? That's random. I heard about Pigeon John to talk to him about a story that was in my Victory Lap book. But I haven't really talked to him. Dallas Huntress says, did you read my song? Dallas, I don't really read lyrics, because reading lyrics, I mean, I could read lyrics, but I don't really see the point. It seems odd to me to read, you know what I'm saying? So if you really want me to hear it, I think you should record it and then check out my Patreon, patreon.com/KJ52. Kyle Siana says, KJ, love when you came to Bethany in Agawam, Massachusetts. That's a long time ago. Jeff Rodas says, does your former DJ still work with Funky? No, actually, no, he doesn't. Chuck Moffat says, I played that song for everyone. Jesse Winkler says, what shoes are you rocking these days? Combination of Brooks for running and still Nike Air Max. What else we got here? Got any shows coming up? What do you think? Jody Robinson, I saw you at Falls Creek Children's Camp 20 years ago. That's cool. Loved you growing up. You and John Rubin were the real deal. Dope. Charles Burbank says, you've had a lot of changes lately. Are you still finding outlets for your creativity? And are you at the point where, dagnabbit, I can't, oh, there he is. Are you at the point where you feel you should be an advocate to mentor up-and-coming artists? Actually, I've been doing that. I just keep it on the low, but I have been doing that. And yes, I still find creativity. I'm actually the creative director at my church, so I got plenty of outlets. Dwayne Elliott, what was M's actual response? What happened when you talked to Kim Mathers? Yeah, I think I'll talk more about some of those details tomorrow for the part 2. Can you say hi to my 1-year-old Annabelle? Hi, Annabelle. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it, guys. Obviously, I'm getting in the darkness here, so I appreciate y'all. Make sure you check out Dear Slim FAQ tonight, dropping at 12 o'clock, and I'll be back with part 2 tomorrow.